Hi, Maggie here again with the latest edition of The Vocal Human. Apologies for the way I look. I just had to make the most of the available time slot here. So I'm just me, exactly as I am. So didn't get time to dress up, but I'm still me. Um, if you've watched the latest video on my other video series, Thoughts from a Changing Mind, this video I'm going to do here will be very similar um, because it touches on similar concepts, but this will expand it a little bit more in relation to just, you know, everyday life rather than specifically with the subjects that are covered in Thoughts from a Changing Mind. So anyway, um, there have been some interesting developments recently, and one of the biggest ones, obviously, is the elections that happened last Tuesday. I'm recording this on the Friday after those elections, and thankfully, they were a huge landslide for pro-democracy, and it was a very, very clear indication that people are fed up with the dictatorship that is the current US administration. They're not going to kowtow to the regime, and they're going to fight for their democracy. And it was hugely heartening. Unfortunately, there are other things which are less heartening, and that's to be expected because as things get more desperate for the regime, they are going to get more desperate and do more desperate things to try and survive. So there's a lot of hard work to do. I mean, everybody pins their hopes on the midterms in another year's time. And potentially, if the last, elections repeat themselves, then it could be amazing. It could literally turn things around. But there's so much that could happen between then and now that could destroy that possibility. So it's nice to celebrate, but there's a lot of hard work to do, and we can't shirk from doing that. And we got to steel ourselves to the hardships that are going to be placed upon us to try and deflect us from what we've got to do. But what's interesting about all of this is it made me think that people are beginning to realize that they actually have more strength than they imagined. And there's a lot of things that play into that. I think, for a long, long time, people have felt rightly, in most cases, aggrieved at what their government is doing for them. And they feel that, they're not being looked after or considered or even cared about. And they felt that that was just something that they had to observe and hope would get better. And it was easy to blame the government and blame someone else for not doing something. Or, we were expecting government and democracy to be provided to us. And I think what started those seeds of change was when Jimmy Kimmel was supposedly going to be cancelled. And people just said, no, we're not going to do that. And we have the ability to try and change that. So they were cancelling their Disney subscriptions and protesting outside of all these different places. And in very rapid fashion, they relented and Jimmy Kimmel was saved. And I think people realized that we did it. We actually had the power to change policy. And there are also parallels with, if you go back in history, whether it's the Germans, the Nazis, with their blitzkrieg going through Europe in 1940, or the Japanese in Asia in 1941, where they were sweeping all before them, and people honestly believed that they were invincible, they were unbeatable. And after a while, they started suffering defeats. And that veneer of invincibility was gradually shattered. And we realized they're just the same as anybody else, and we have just as much ability to push back and resist them as anything else. And it's exactly the same with this current regime, in that they've tried to shock us with all of these things, bombard us with all of these horrible things that they're doing to us. They want us to lose hope. They want us to think that they're invincible and there's nothing that we can do. But the Jimmy Kimmel episode started to show a crack in that. And these latest elections, it widened that crack significantly. People began to not only see, but believe that they had the power. Excuse me just a minute. I've got to, there you go. They have the power. God, all these people are trying to get hold of me and I can't see the timer. They have the power to actually change things. And it's revealing in that it's not a matter of democracy and government is given to us. It's actually that we have democracy in us. And if we want democracy, then we have to go out and take it and make it. And we shouldn't have to wait for someone else to do it for us. If we don't like what we see, we go out and change it. And whereas, a lot of people said, well, I don't vote because my vote doesn't matter or there's nothing I can do. I think that attitude is starting to change, and that people realize that, yeah, it's not going to change if I don't do something. And I can change it if I, along with other people who think the same way, go out and take action. And you've got to look again at the same way as, some of the candidates that were so successful in those elections. Beforehand, it was a matter of, who are the candidates that are being given to us by the national congresses of both parties, the national committees of both parties. They're telling us this is the person we should vote for. But in fact, what's happened with those latest round of candidates, and again, the protest organizations, they've not been provided to us. It's come from the grassroots. It's come from the ground up. The candidates that have been so successful were people where people said, this is the person who's listening to us, and this is the person that we want to vote for and represent us. And it's the same, as I say, with the protests. It's a matter of not we're waiting for the DNC, for example, to just provide the structure where we can do it. We've just said, right, we all need to get together and do this. And things were created so that we could do this ourselves. And I think, again, apologies, I think that this realization that we have the power and the ability in ourselves is a huge advance. And I know I've quoted this before, but Raphael Warnock, the representative from Georgia, said, it's nothing to do with the people in power, it's about the power of the people. And I think that is even more prescient now. It's even more true. And I think we all need to take courage from what we can do, but also steel ourselves to say, right, as we can change something, now let's go out and do that and put the hard work in. So anyway, be encouraged, be enthused, and let's all do this together. Please like, subscribe, pass it on to friends. Please comment. I love seeing the comments. Stay safe, well, and happy. And look forward to talking to you again very soon. So big hugs from me. Bye for now. Bye.